We're here today with Paul Asbell. Paul has a long recording career and has been a guitar teacher for quite a while. He has recorded with such blues musicians as Howling and Muddy Waters on a particular favorite album of mine, Fathers and Sons. He has done recordings of his own more recently that delve into all corners of roots Americana music, drawing on sources from many, many different genres and eras. And Paul also has a profile on FindaGuitarTeacher.com. Welcome, Paul. Thank you for talking with us today.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for asking me.
It's really wonderful to be here with you. And can you tell us first where you teach? What city and what state are you in?
I live in Burlington, Vermont. And, kind of up towards the Canadian border, really far north, not that really matters to a Skypester. And I teach out of my home studio, basically, which is where I am right now.
Yes.
And I have probably at any given time maybe 5 Skype students, somewhere between 5 and 10, and then maybe possibly 10 to 15 private students who I see face to face. And my objective with the Skype thing is to try to make the face to realize as much of what we can do face to face to try to replicate here. And actually, with how DSL and broadband has gotten so much better in recent months, and they're so easy to send PDFs back and forth, which I do often when I'm teaching, that it's pretty darn close now to being a face-to-face lesson, except it's modulated by the electronics.
Yeah, the technology has improved dramatically within a very recent period, like you say.
Yeah.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about kind of the guitar lesson climate there in Burlington? Do you find there are a lot of people who want to learn guitar? And also, what styles do your students most often want to learn?
Well, what I try to be, in my opinion, the perfect guitar instructor, which I try to be, is somebody who's really ready, no matter who walks up in front of them and says, well, I'd like to be able to do this someday, or I heard this person on the, on a record that I have, or on the YouTube, or in a concert, or, Paul, I heard you at a concert last night, and that's what I'd like to do. And then, of course, the question becomes, well, where are you now? And basically,
yes,
I try to do with the student is figure out where point A and point B are as soon as we can. Point A being, what do you know and what could you do at this moment? And point B being, what is your pipe dream of what you'd like to think you could achieve, down the road, be it 6 months or 20 years or whatever.
And I notice you have several guitars around you right now. You mentioned the various styles of guitar that you teach. Do you use different guitars to demonstrate to students different styles that they would like to learn? Maybe you could play a little bit for us.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I do is play acoustic guitar, flat top acoustic, both fingerstyle and pick style. I've been doing it. Actually, this is the very first kind of guitar that I ever learned to play. People like Woody Guthrie and Bob Dylan were actually my sort of heroes when I was like 12, and that's by far the most significant thing for a while. And then I kind of progressed to people like Mississippi John Hurt, various styles of fingerstyle blues is one of the things I'm kind of known for, and to the point where a certain number of my students kind of know that that's something that I really love. And if that is part of what their point B is, then they often say it right away. They may relate to a certain record or a certain concert or something. There are all kinds of styles of that. that style, which you may recognize as not far from kind of basic Muddy Waters.
Of course.
Roots. We were just talking about Fathers and Sons a minute ago, but it really comes from a guy named Robert Johnson, as you probably know. And there's a certain number, there's kind of diverse little subsections of fingerstyle blues, but a certain proportion of people that come for lessons are people who are really in love, as I am, with that style and want to get somehow either farther with it or maybe get into it from scratch, and they just don't know kind of how. And
right.
That is definitely one of the things that not only do I do teach, but I love to teach. I feel like I've figured out certain things that are very, very typical hurdles that people can't get over, or entryways that they just haven't discovered, so they can't get in the door. At this point in our history, there's a million things on the internet. There's more. We are deluged with information, so everybody can find a tab somewhere.
Right.
Johnson's, or Freight Train by Libba Cotton or something, or Deep River Blues by Doc Watson, and nobody is wanting for any of those things, unlike
right.
30 years ago. But on the other hand, why can't I play this thing, and what is keeping me from being able to do it is something that I really think is it's a must for a certain number of people, and that's what I hear over and over again, is I just don't know where to begin with this stuff. And that's I work at a lot.
And we were discussing your more recent CDs recently that delve into a lot of these American musical traditions from all different eras.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the music you're describing on the acoustic guitar, that is the wheelhouse that you enjoy most. But do you specialize in teaching that, or do you find that a lot of students are interested in other things, so you go with them in that direction?
There's definitely a whole bunch of people that who are interested in acoustic guitar. They may own one, they may not, but they're electric guitarists at heart, as we all know. Probably there's far more electric guitarists. Sorry about that.
That's
than
all right.
Guitarists. And so, for people who are electric players, the style that I associate with Buddy Guy and Otis Rush, people who in Chicago who I used to play with, but most people would associate with Eric Clapton or Stevie Ray Vaughan. Basically what I would call blues electric lead guitar, and all of the rock forms that kind of have sprung historically from that. A certain number of people who come for lessons, that's really what gets them. That's what they like. And, maybe they have a notion that someday they would like to pick up an acoustic guitar and maybe use their fingers of the right hand finger style to do, but that's sort of off the radar screen of the immediate thing. And so for me, if I can get right to the heart of what somebody is fired up about right now, I think any guitar teacher would be an idiot to not pay attention to what is it that this person's heart is beating for right now. You sort of have to.
That's the core of it all.
It is, and so a lot of times, sometimes if somebody really doesn't know what they want to do, I will kind of grab a couple of guitars as I'm doing here and play a little bit and just watch, see if their eyes light up. I know that sounds kind of silly, but sometimes I tend to think that somebody will know exactly what they want to do. But that isn't often the case. I think sometimes either somebody's afraid to say it, or else they just haven't quite figured out what the name of that thing is. But when they hear it, they know it. And so sometimes it's really worthwhile for me to go through with different guitars playing slightly different styles. Excuse me for a second. I'll grab another guitar. And play, one or two things that that and just watch their eyes and see if, was that the thing? And so, for example, here's, as you can see, it's not exactly conventional, but it's a more or less jazz-oriented instrument. Just noticed there's a pickup there. that's a whole world. Basically, it's a lifetime, actually, to be honest with you.
It is.
You know, and you perhaps know that. You know, the world of jazz guitar, be it playing single string, you know, whether it's playing kind of bebop leads and stuff, or kind of playing fusion-esque kind of things of that style, or what in some ways is the most difficult of all, which is kind of playing, I will just call it chord melody guitar, where the guitar is being a piano, you know, which is what I was attempting to do just a second ago.
Of course.
That's one of those things that I think comes after a whole bunch of other styles have been worked at, and possibly, you know, a person's gotten somewhere with it, but they really want to figure out a way so that they can actually play something that doesn't require another player. You know, can be, right. You know, they can say, do you know this song? And they can sit down and play that song without having to have a jam track behind them, or, you know, that sort of thing. I think one of the things for guitarists that's befuddling is they'll hear some awesome Eric Clapton lead or whatever, and they sort of never have thought that if I play that lead, but there's nobody playing with me, it's going to sound, I mean, if Eric Clapton himself was here playing that lead, it would sound very, very empty. So how do you get it?
Exactly.
So you play a blues, you know. So they can play something where it actually feels like that's that song, and I'm not really missing anybody.
Exactly, a very full sound.
Yeah, and that's kind of every jazz guitarist's vision of what they'd like to be. And I think if you do it decently, people don't realize how hard it is. But I think often people don't also realize, they don't know the words to ask for that, if you get what I mean. So I kind of try to play certain things enough to be able to say, is this sounding like something that you'd like to do?
Yeah.
And you know, at some point you find something that fires a person up enough, and off we go.
And you mentioned yourself as a guitar student. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you learned guitar? Well,
it's funny because I'm pretty much entirely self-taught. I took 2 lessons ever. One with a hero of mine named Wayne Bennett, who lived in Chicago on the South Side, very, very close to where I used to live in the late 60s. And he used to play with Bobby Bland. And when I realized that Bobby Bland's guitarist, a guy I'd been listening to on all these great cuts, and you know, just loved his solo on Stormy Monday and all of these tunes, I could think, I Don't Want No Woman, and a whole bunch of things where I could sing you those solos, just like a kid could sing you Jimmy Page's, you know, Stairway to Heaven solo. And I found that this guy lived 3 blocks away. So, of course, I went to him for a lesson. I was a little bummed that he, the first thing, once he discovered I play blues, and I said, I want to learn more, and he said, you already know how to play blues. Here's what I'm going to show you. And he proceeded to show me Up, Up, and Away, My Beautiful Balloon. And
really?
Yes, it sort of took me by surprise. And so to be perfectly honest, I never went back for a lesson with Wayne, which I was kind of chagrined at, but I was not ready to. Now I understand what he was trying to do, but at the time, it was a bridge too far for me. And the second lesson, and only lesson I ever took, besides with Wayne, was with a guy named Barry Galbraith, who's a very, very esteemed jazz guitarist. And basically, Barry said, you sound like you're on the right path. And if I were your shoes, I would just keep going. You know, you can come back for a lesson if you want, but I'll just tell you, whatever you've been doing so far. And in a way, I went to find out what he would say. And I respected the hell out of him for saying that. I was very grateful to him, because that's kind of what I wanted to hear. I mean, if I'm off base or if there's something that you feel I'm missing, please let me know. And he basically said, keep doing what you're doing.
That's wonderful, Paul. And on your website, you mentioned that growing up, there were musicians playing in Chicago who would visit your folks' house, such as Big Bill Broonzy. Did you learn from various musicians who would visit your family's house about the guitar?
I mean, it would be a great story if I could sort of say me sitting down on Bill Broonzy's knee and him showing me, but I wish. I was 3,
Okay.
and I just barely remember it. He is one of my faves and certainly one of my musical heroes now. So it's a funny thing for me to dimly remember that this guy was over at the house. I kind of rediscovered him as a, and realized this is the guy that my parents knew back in Chicago, but now I'm a serious guitarist or a guitar student, and I'm a completely different person in a way than that little kid that was bugged because he was trying to get to sleep at night and my dad was playing music with his friends. And there was music in the house all the time, and I have to say at some point the gratitude that I saw very clearly that music is something that humans produce in the living room trying to keep their kids awake or whatever, as opposed to from the radio. I think that's a big thing that I'll forever be grateful for. I wish I could give that gift to somebody, but it is really just how you grow up, and I was fortunate enough to grow up in that way.
And it sounds like that is what you offer your students in the space of the guitar lessons, is that chance to be there with the live music.
Yeah. It's funny because when I first started teaching, I never really thought that way. I really kind of thought, no, the best thing I really can do, no matter what somebody expects this lesson to be, the best thing that I can do is really just give them the information that they need and so that they can do it themselves. And I don't think that that's wrong, but I had that idea when information was very, very hard to come by 35 years ago, when there was not an internet and there weren't anywhere near as many books and tabs and whatnot out there. So information was hard to come by, and I thought I was doing, a service by throwing out this transcription to somebody or providing information about, kind of music theory or whatever. And now we live in a kind of information glutted age where if my theory had been right, there would be no point for a guitar teacher at all, because it's all out there and a lot of it's free. And yet there's a lot of people who want guitar lessons, and I think part of it is because it ain't just about the information anymore. Maybe it never was. A lot of it is I need to see somebody doing it. And when I'm just sort of, even the nonverbal little cues that you get from watching somebody becomes a part of how this music is transmitted, if you know what I mean. And having a personal relationship with that person and having that person actually pay attention to what you're about as opposed to showing you what they're about. I now really think that that's a big, big part of what the lesson thing can be, and I try to remember that all the time when I'm teaching.
Yeah, what you said about music being something that human beings do, the gratitude, I think it does come down to that at the bottom line. Yeah. Well, we're going to end the interview in a minute, but it would be great to hear you play a little bit more guitar on the guitar of your choice, whichever one you'd like to do, but maybe a little bit more of a song than what you were playing before, and then we'll end the interview at that point.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Here's a little unpremeditated tune that... Let's see.
That's beautiful, Paul. Thank you so much for playing that. And
Thank
Paul
you.
Asbell, I want to thank you again for taking the time to talk to us. It's been a real pleasure learning more about you and your music and about your guitar teaching.
So appreciate it, James. Good talking to you.
It's good talking to you too, and look forward to seeing you soon on Find a Guitar Teacher.
Sounds great.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You too.